Beneath the silent arch of a city bridge, a kind-hearted, intellectually disabled black father and his young daughter scraped by, collecting discarded bottles. He faced constant judgment, beatings, and relentless expulsion. One day, while foraging for scraps near a local bookstore, a group of children accidentally ignited a blaze. Henry, the father, bravely risked his life to rescue a trapped boy, only to be unjustly arrested for arson. The truth emerged only when the boy regained consciousness and recounted the events. Unbeknownst to Henry, the child was the son of a billionaire, and their lives were about to undergo an extraordinary transformation. On Brookhaven's east side, beyond Walker Park's ancient oaks and fractured pavement, a modest gray tarp fluttered under the highway overpass, a forgotten banner against the city's ceaseless pulse. Daily the urban current flowed past, earbud-wearing joggers, office workers on their morning rush, mothers expertly maneuvering strollers while sipping lattes. Not a single head turned. Yet within that makeshift shelter lived Henry Fields and his daughter, Leah. Henry, in his early 40s, carried the weight of more years in the etched lines of his face. His deep brown skin, weathered by sun and rain, spoke of a life lived outdoors. He wore a faded, oversized flannel shirt, its cuffs frayed, and his dark hair was unevenly cropped, a testament to self-sufficiency with dull scissors. Henry's words emerged slowly, deliberately, as if fragile, lest they shatter if hurried. Some dismissed him as slow, others offered no label at all. But to Leah he was simply Daddy. Leah, 8 years old, was a bundle of knees and elbows, adorned with a gap-toothed grin and eyes so bright they could pierce the densest clouds. Her hair, gathered into 2 fluffy ponytails, was secured with mismatched pink ribbons. Her coat was too thin for the October chill and her shoes bore holes, yet she never uttered a single complaint. Each morning she'd gently rouse her father with a soft tug and a whispered plea, "Daddy, it's morning. Time to find bottles." Henry would slowly sit up, rubbing his eyes. "Did you have good dreams last night?" She'd always nodded. "I dreamed about my pink dress." That dress was Leah's everything. She'd glimpsed one like it once, in a downtown shop window, cotton candy pink, with delicate sparkles at the waist and a ribbon to tie in the back. Her nose pressed against the glass, she'd whispered, "That's the one." Henry had promised her that day, "For your birthday, baby girl, I'm going to get you that dress. We'll dance in the park just like in the fairy movies." Her 9th birthday was just 2 days away. Their mornings were dedicated to scavenging for recyclables. Henry bore the large, slung bag while Leah from the sidewalk would call out, "There's a can by the trash bin." Theirs was a practiced rhythm, a silent ballet of survival, effective because it had to be. Henry avoided handouts not out of pride, but from the fear of the accompanying stares, the suspicion, the way people clutched their purses tighter or crossed the street. They earned their meager existence, 50 cents here, a dollar there, just enough for bread, sometimes a banana. Henry never spent a cent on himself. Every quarter went into a dented cookie tin tucked beneath Leah's blanket. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, the park lay mostly deserted. The air carried the scent of fallen leaves and city dust. Leah sat on the grass, knees drawn to her chest, humming a soft tune. Henry sat beside her, chewing the inside of his cheek, counting the coins in his palm. He wondered if Leah noticed his quiet sigh. She did. "Do you think we almost have enough?" she asked. Henry looked at her, his eyes gentle yet weary. "Almost," he affirmed, "real close." She nodded, her belief unwavering. Maybe she did. From her pocket she produced a small, broken mirror found last week. She held it up, smiling into her reflection. "When I wear the dress, I'm going to spin really fast like this," she declared, twirling with outstretched arms. "And we'll dance. You promise you'll dance with me?" Henry chuckled, a raspy but full sound. "Ain't nobody gonna outdance me, girl." The laughter faded as he glanced at the tin. He was short, perhaps $2 short. Tomorrow, Saturday, was his final chance. He'd have to rise before dawn, scour every alley, every trash can within a 5-meter radius if necessary. He carefully tucked Leah into their makeshift bed, brushing dirt from her face. She clutched the one-eyed, noseless teddy bear someone had discarded last year, loving it as if brand new. As she drifted to sleep, Henry sat outside the tent, knees drawn to his chest, listening to the distant roar of traffic overhead. He knew he wasn't a smart man. He didn't know how to fix things, fill out forms, or argue with uniformed people. But he knew one thing. A promise made to Leia was a promise kept. He gazed at the stars, whispering to the empty air, "Just a little more. Just need a little more." With that, he leaned back against the cold concrete wall, let the night settle in, and prayed for a merciful morning. The sky remained a deep navy when Henry emerged from under the overpass. The city hadn't quite awakened, save for the occasional groaning bus and the spectral hum of a street sweeper. He zipped his worn jacket, slung the empty sack over his shoulder, and glanced back at the tent where Leia slept peacefully, curled under the thin blanket. Her serenity infused him with the strength to push his aching legs forward. He walked with a slight limp. His knees had been troubling him lately, too many miles, too little rest. But there was no time for pain. He had a mission. Today was the day he'd find enough bottles for that promised dress. Henry Fields did not break promises to her. His first stop was the alley behind the Mason Avenue grocery store. He recalled an overflowing recycling bin there last Saturday morning, but upon rounding the corner he found it already emptied, only wet cardboard and a banana peel remaining. He stared for a long second, then shook his head, adjusted his sack, and moved on. As the sun broke the horizon, the city began to stir. Henry passed the bus stop where collared workers with coffee cups and tired eyes congregated. He always avoided eye contact. They didn't truly see him anyway. He was just part of the scenery, a shape to be navigated around. At 7th and Delmare, a security guard stood outside a gas station, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Henry didn't even reach the recycling bin before the man stepped forward. "You don't belong here. Keep moving." Henry stopped, opened his mouth, then closed it. He slowly raised both hands and backed away, muttering, "Just looking for bottles. That's all." "Try somewhere else," the guard snapped. Henry turned and walked, his cheeks burning, not from the morning chill. Next he tried the residential streets. Friday had been trash day, so he hoped someone might have forgotten their bins. At a small blue house with flower pots on the porch, he spotted a clear bag of cans by the fence. His heart leaped. He approached quietly, gently untied the bag, careful not to disturb anything, but as he slung it over his shoulder, the front door creaked open. A middle-aged man in a bathrobe emerged, frowning. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Henry froze. "Just bottles. I wasn't taking anything else. That's private property. Get the hell off my lawn before I call the cops." "I didn't mean anything bad," Henry softly said, already retreating. But the man wasn't finished. "You people are always stealing, always lurking around." Henry's hands trembled. He dropped the bag, nodded quickly, and turned to leave. He made it 2 blocks before a car screeched to a halt in front of him. 3 teenage boys in hoodies spilled out, looking no older than 16. One tossed a soda can at Henry's chest. "Hey trash man, you missed a spot." Henry flinched as the can struck him. He tried to walk around them, but one stepped into his path. "Are you deaf, huh? You smell like piss, man." The second boy shoved Henry's shoulder, not hard, not yet, but enough. Henry raised his arms in defense, voice cracking. "I ain't bothering nobody. I'm just trying to." The punch came fast, straight to his stomach. He bent over, wheezing. Another kick caught him in the ribs. He didn't fight back, he never did. He just dropped to his knees and covered his head with both hands, rocking slightly, letting out a low whimper that was neither quite a cry nor a scream. It was the sound of someone trying to vanish. Eventually the boys lost interest. One spat near his foot. Another laughed and said, "Go crawl back under your bridge, freak." They drove off, music blaring. Henry remained on the ground for a long moment, trembling. Then slowly he sat up. His lip was bleeding, one eye already swelling, but he reached for his sack, now ripped along a seam, and began stuffing the few spilled bottles back inside. He limped forward, ribs aching with every breath, but he kept going. By late morning he'd reached downtown. The sidewalks buzzed with activity. Shoppers with their bags, college students sipping smoothies, tourists snapping photos of murals they didn't comprehend. Henry walked along the curb, eyes scanning trash bins, his sack growing heavier with each find. And then he saw it. A group of kids laughing and circling near the old corner bookstore. It was one of the city's last bastions of second-hand novels, dusty hardbacks and yellowed paperbacks redolent of forgotten eras. The shopkeeper, an old man with thick glasses, stood just inside the open door, too preoccupied with rearranging shelves to notice the commotion outside. The children, 3 of them perhaps 9 or 10 years old, crouched by the wooden steps, striking match after match from a worn box of paper matches. Each burst of flame elicited a squeal, followed by the dropped match sizzling out. One boy tossed a match toward the building's edge. Henry froze. He stepped closer, watching the tiny flare hit a dry leaf and smolder. When the flame extinguished, he exhaled. Then he spotted the empty matchbox and bent to pick it up, considering if the cardboard could be recycled. He held it up, squinting at the label. Then he heard it, a faint crack followed by a whoosh. He turned. Behind the open bookstore door, smoke curled from a corner shelf where books lay too close to a space heater. The flame was small, but it spread rapidly. A child's scream echoed from within. Henry's heart seized. Before anyone else registered what was happening, he dropped the matchbox and sprinted toward the smoke. The smoke thickened, clawing through the bookstore's interior like searching fingers. Henry rushed forward, waving his arms and yelling at passers-by, but no one heeded him. A woman with a stroller glanced his way and pulled her child closer. A man in a business suit gave him a wide berth without breaking stride. Henry kept shouting, his voice cracking with panic. "There's a kid inside. Somebody help. Fire." Still nothing. They didn't see him, or worse, they saw him and chose to look through him. His clothes were filthy, his face bruised, his sack of bottles slung across his back like an unshakable burden. People assumed the worst, as always. That he was high, that he was yelling nonsense, that whatever trouble was unfolding, he was the cause, not the witness. He turned back to the store. The smoke was now dense, pressing against the glass like breath on a cold pane. Inside, a small boy huddled near a fallen shelf, hands clamped over his head, his tiny frame trembling with each cough. The flame had now engulfed a curtain, climbing upward, greedy and fast. Henry's heartbeat hammered in his ears. He shouted again, louder this time, "Please. He's going to die in there." A man walking by frowned and muttered, "Crazy bastard," before brushing past and bumping Henry's shoulder. The contact ignited something inside him. Henry stopped shouting. He clenched his jaw, dropped his sack to the ground and plunged straight through the door. Inside, the heat struck him like a physical blow. Smoke clawed at his eyes and throat, making each breath a struggle. He dropped to his knees and crawled beneath the growing haze, calling out softly, "Hey buddy, it's okay. I'm coming." He saw the boy then, pinned under the edge of a heavy wooden shelf, face smeared with soot, tears carving clean trails down his cheeks. The child wasn't screaming anymore. He was barely breathing. Henry scrambled forward and tried to lift the shelf, but it was too heavy. His hands, already raw from the earlier beating, slipped on the scorched wood. He coughed hard, lungs burning, then wrapped both arms under the boy and pulled. The shelf barely budged, but it shifted just enough for the boy to wiggle free, gasping. Henry scooped him up, one arm beneath the boy's legs, the other around his back. The boy clung to his neck instinctively, his small hands digging into Henry's tattered collar. The heat was unbearable now. Flames crackled nearby, licking at the floorboards. Henry stumbled, vision blurring, but pressed on. As he reached the threshold, someone finally noticed. A woman across the street screamed. A man shouted, "Someone's still inside." Henry emerged through the doorway, coughing, his jacket smoldering. He dropped to his knees on the sidewalk, still holding the boy tight against his chest. The child was crying now, loud and alive. A moment later, sirens wailed in the distance. People began to gather, phones raised, voices overlapping. The shopkeeper rushed out, babbling about insurance and claiming no fault. Firefighters pushed through the crowd. A woman knelt beside Henry and attempted to take the boy, but he wouldn't release him until he saw the child's chest rise and fall independently. Then came the police. 2 officers approached, one already reaching for his cuffs. Henry looked up, dazed, cheeks streaked with ash. "Stand up. Hands where I can see them." Henry blinked, confused. "No, I saved him." "I didn't." "You were seen running from the store with this," an officer stated, lifting the empty matchbox from the sidewalk. "That yours?" "I picked it up." "I thought you set the fire." "No. Oh, there were kids. Matches." "Please, I didn't." "Turn around." Henry hesitated, holding up his blistered hands. "Please, my daughter, she's waiting for me. She's all alone." The officers didn't care. They forced him onto his stomach, yanking his arms behind his back, and the cuffs clicked tight. Henry let out a choked cry, not from pain but from fear, not for himself but for Leia. "Don't take me," he whispered. "She's waiting and I got to get back." "Right," one officer muttered. "Another junkie with a story." As they pulled him to his feet, the boy he had saved was already being loaded into the back of an ambulance, his small body wrapped in a blanket, eyes shut. No one heard Henry's voice over the din. No one asked what happened. No one saw the burn marks on his hands or the blood on his lip. To them he was the problem. They shoved him into the back of the patrol car. As the door slammed shut, Henry pressed his forehead to the glass and whispered again, "Leia." Across town the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across Walker Park. The tarp beneath the bridge rustled in the wind. Inside, Leia sat alone, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the fading light. The cookie tin remained under her blanket. The coins inside hadn't stirred. She waited just like every other night. But this time her daddy didn't return. And outside the police station, as Henry sat alone in a holding cell with blistered palms and dried blood on his shirt, he pressed his eyes shut and saw her face. Not scared, not angry, just waiting, trusting he would keep his promise. But he was trapped behind cold steel, labeled a criminal, left to sleep on concrete while the city outside resumed its pretense that he didn't exist. The police station lights flickered overhead, humming faintly, casting a pale glow over the narrow holding cell. Henry sat on the edge of the hard bench, hands resting in his lap, wrists red and raw from the handcuffs they had finally removed. His palms still stung, the skin blistered and tight, but he seemed beyond feeling it. His eyes stared ahead, dull and distant, fixed on something far beyond the concrete wall. Leia. Every few minutes he'd whisper her name under his breath, just to keep the sound alive in his chest. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. He had no idea what time it was. All he knew was that she was out there, alone, probably scared, maybe cold, and he was stuck. A younger officer walked by his cell, glanced in, then quickly looked away. Henry didn't bother speaking. They had already asked their questions. They didn't want his answers. He tried to tell them again and again. He saw the fire, he tried to help, the boy was trapped, the matches weren't his. But none of it mattered. The story had already been written before they ever cuffed him. Across town, the boy Henry had rescued from the flames lay in a hospital bed on the 4th floor of St. Jude's Medical Center. His name was Oliver Whitmore, age 7, son of David Whitmore, real estate magnate, philanthropist, and one of the wealthiest men in the state. The boy was bruised, with light burns on his arms and smoke still clinging to his lungs, but he was alive and slowly he was waking up. The nurse leaned over gently. "Can you hear me, sweetheart?" Oliver blinked, then nodded. "Do you know your name?" He rasped it out, voice small but steady. "Oliver." The nurse smiled. "Good job. Do you remember what happened?" He paused, his hands tightening slightly around the blanket's edges. Then he nodded again. "There was fire. The shelf fell. I couldn't move." She leaned in. "And who helped you, honey? Do you remember who got you out?" The boy's eyes widened slightly, suddenly sharper. "Yes. He was dirty. People yelled at him. But he pulled me out. He said it was okay. He wasn't scary." The nurse exchanged a glance with the attending doctor. She smiled again. "Can you tell us what he looked like?" Oliver squinted, struggling. "He had a rip in his coat and a cut on his face. He coughed a lot. But he held me like Daddy does." The nurse stood up straight, brows knitting. "Do you think he started the fire?" "No," the boy said with more force now. "The fire came from the back. My friends were playing with matches. They dropped one. I told them not to, but they ran." The doctor stepped out of the room and called the hospital administrator. Within 20 minutes, the statement was relayed. Another 20, and a city lawyer was en route to the station. Back in the cell, Henry sat motionless until he heard the first voice that didn't sound like a threat. "Mr. Fields?" a woman asked. She stood outside his cell, dressed in a navy blue coat with a badge clipped to her belt. Her tone was different, measured, not cold. He stood slowly, unsure. "Yes. That's me. My name's Lauren Sanchez. I work with the city's public interest legal unit. We've just received an official statement from the child you rescued." Henry blinked, his heart stumbling. "The boy said you saved his life. He said you pulled him from the fire." His lips parted. He did. He also made it very clear that you didn't start anything, that the fire was caused by his friends, and that you were the only one who tried to help. Henry felt the weight in his chest shift, slowly, cautiously, as if hope was something he wasn't quite ready to embrace. "So I can go?" he asked, barely a whisper. The woman's eyes softened. "Yes, you can go." 2 officers returned with keys and opened the cell. One of them, the older one who'd arrested him, avoided Henry's gaze. The other offered a nod as if that could rectify everything. As Henry stepped out, the ache in his body hit him all at once. But he didn't care. He was already thinking of the park, the tarp, the cold ground beneath the bridge, and the small figure who might still be sitting there waiting. He walked. The sky had darkened to purple, city lights flickering on one by one. His legs burned, but he kept going, weaving through alleys and across intersections like a man driven by something deeper than instinct. By promise, by love, by the sheer need to be seen again by the only person who ever truly saw him. When he reached the park, his chest felt tight, not from pain but from fear. What if she was gone? What if something had happened? But then he saw her. Leia was curled up near the base of the tent, arms wrapped around her knees, head resting on her teddy bear. Her coat was still zipped to the top, but she was shivering. Her eyes were closed. Henry knelt down slowly and touched her shoulder. "Leia." She stirred, then jolted awake. When she saw him, her face froze for half a second as if she couldn't believe it. Then her arms shot around his neck, her tiny body pressing into his chest with all her strength. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry I was late." She pulled back and looked at his face, saw the bruises, the burns, the exhaustion. But she didn't ask what happened. Instead, she smiled and softly said, "Tomorrow's my birthday." He nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek with his knuckle. "We still got time." That night they barely slept. They just held each other, breathing slow and steady beneath the hum of passing cars above. The world hadn't fundamentally changed, yet something within it had shifted. And somewhere far away, a wealthy man stared at a phone call from the hospital, a call that would alter his path and Henry's forever. But that too would come in time. For now, all that mattered was that she wasn't alone, and neither was he. The sun rose slowly, quietly, casting long, soft light across the park grass and the cracked concrete under the bridge. A gentle breeze stirred the tarp flap as if it breathed. Henry sat with his knees pulled up, arms wrapped tight around them. His eyes were red and swollen, not from sleep but from too much thought. Leia sat beside him, eating a small piece of bread she'd saved from the night before. She didn't say much, just stayed close. Henry opened the cookie tin again and poured the coins into his palm. He counted under his breath, tapping each coin with his finger. "I'm 2.25. No, wait." He stopped, shook the tin, counted again. I ain't got enough," he mumbled. Leia looked over. "It's okay, Daddy." Henry blinked rapidly, staring at the coins. "I said I'd get it. I told you I said I would. I tried real hard." "I know," she said, touching his arm. "You tried a lot. I was going to get the pink one," he said, voice shaking. "The one with the shiny bow. I saw it. You liked it." Leia nodded slowly. "I did. But it's okay. We didn't get it. We can try next year." Henry looked at her, his mouth slightly open. You ain't mad?" She smiled softly. "No, Daddy, you came back. That's what matters." Henry pressed his forehead against her shoulder and she let him rest there. For a long time they just sat like that. The coins lay scattered on the dirt between them. A few rolled out of the tin, but neither moved to pick them up. Then footsteps descended the hill. Henry looked up, squinting at the morning sun. A man in a long dark coat and a small boy walked toward them. The boy had blonde hair and wore a thick green jacket. Henry blinked a few times, confused. The boy looked familiar. "Mr. Fields?" the man asked. Henry stood up slowly, his hand holding Leia's. That's me." The man gave a small nod. "I'm David Whitmore. This is my son Oliver. You helped him yesterday." Henry looked at the boy. Oliver smiled and waved. I did." Henry asked. He got out." "Okay," David nodded. "Thanks to you." Henry smiled, then frowned quickly. They said I did something bad." "I know. But Oliver told the truth," David said. "And now we know too." Henry looked down. I didn't want to hurt nobody. I just saw him. He was stuck. I had to go. I believe you, David said. And I want to thank you properly. You and your daughter. Leia looked up. Hi. David smiled at her. Hi there. What's your name, Leia? Leia. Well, Leia, I have a big house, a safe place, and I was wondering, would you two like to come stay for a while? Henry blinked. Like at your house? A real one? David nodded. Yes, just for a while. Warm food, soft bed, school if you want. Henry looked down at Leia. You want to go? She squeezed his hand. Maybe we try? Henry nodded slowly, then looked back at David. We can try. I think we can. The ride to the house was quiet. Leia held her father's hand the whole time. Henry kept looking out the window as if unsure if it was all real. The driveway curved through a gate and opened onto a wide lawn and a tall house with grand windows and stone walls. It looked like a place from one of the books they used to gaze at through store windows. Inside, everything smelled clean. A lady smiled and showed them to a guest room with warm lights and neatly folded towels. Henry ran his hand over the blanket. It's soft. That's right, the lady said kindly. That evening, David sat with Henry in the kitchen. Oliver colored at a nearby table. Henry fidgeted with a spoon, unsure what to do with it. I didn't know it was your daughter's birthday today, David said. Henry blinked. Huh. Leia told Oliver. Henry looked around, nervous. I was trying to get her a dress. The pink one with the shiny stuff on it. I tried, but I couldn't do it. David nodded slowly. She said you tried real hard. Henry looked down at his hands. I was going to dance with her in the park. I promised. She still wants to, David said softly. Then he stood and walked into the hallway. A few minutes later, a lady returned with a white box in her arms. She set it down in front of Leia. Leia looked at Henry. Can I open it? Henry nodded. Go on, baby girl. Leia untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Her eyes lit up. Inside was the pink dress, soft fabric, sparkly belt, and a ribbon in the back. She gasped. It's the one. Henry covered his mouth with both hands. That's the one from the store. David stood in the doorway, smiling. I didn't know, but I'm glad I do now. Leia looked at her father. Can I wear it tomorrow? Henry nodded fast. Yes, baby. You twirl all you want. The next morning in Walker Park, the wind was light and the sky was blue. Leia stood in the grass, spinning in her new dress, her arms wide. She laughed out loud as the skirt floated around her. Henry stood nearby, smiling broadly, his fingers twitching as if unsure what to do next. Then she held out her hand. Dance with me, Daddy. He looked around, then stepped forward slowly. I don't know how to do it right, he said shyly. You don't have to, she smiled. So he took her hand and they danced.